Good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Doing well. Floor is yours, Tyler.
Awesome. I'll hit a few points. I don't want to echo too much what Coach said before open it up for questions. But just like every year, it's always 2.5, 3 years in the making with our coaching staff hitting the road, digging up these guys, recruiting these guys, developing relationships. Going back to the cornerstone of the core four, as I saw Scott tweet about earlier, with Cody Fox. It's 2.5 years ago that he committed to us, which seems kind of crazy when you think about. But given that history, it's nothing too wild. And then shortly after, Cam Buffington joined the crew, and then about 6 months post, we had Preston and Derek joined the crew, and it's kind of been rolling from there all the way up through. I know everybody thinks that Reese Dakin committed just a few days ago. We've known about Reese now for about 4 months, but we'll let you guys think it was a few days ago. But just a couple things I want to hit. Obviously we signed 20 guys today. We'll sign our 21st here probably in a couple of hours. And then we've also added 10 walk-ons onto our roster, and at that point we're pretty much done. As Coach said, we'll kind of keep an eye open in the portal here in the coming months. We're also waiting on decisions from 6 different players on our current roster. So it's always fluid. I think history would tell you in the past from January through August, we always lose a handful of guys. So the roster management piece has certainly become a little bit different in this day and age, especially with the COVID guys, which we've got one more year of COVID guys next year. And as much as I love all these guys and I want them back, I can't wait for the COVID stuff to go away. It makes my job just a little bit easier. It's fluid anyways. It's extremely fluid when you throw in that little factor. But just talking about our class, one thing that I think is really unique. I think it was 2 years ago in June. We had a horrendous June official visit month. I think it was well documented by some people on here, and rightfully so. One thing that I think is pretty impressive, we brought in 22 official visitors this June, and 21 committed to us. So we've really been done since the end of June. A few guys put out their commitments a little bit later in July, but basically the Monday following our big weekend, we had secured commitments from 20 of those guys from that big weekend, which I think is pretty impressive. And more impressive than that is none of these guys have wavered the entire time since they've committed to us. We had some guys that were picking up offers, and I'm always the first to tell guys, hey, if schools are offering you, great, celebrate it, put it out on Twitter. But I want to be very honest with them. What's your conversation like? Is there something we need to worry about? And at no point this entire fall did we have any worries or concerns with any of our guys. And I think that shows a little bit of just who we're trying to recruit, the guys we're going after, the families we're trying to be associated with, just for guys to be locked in, for that long. Because I think it's pretty well documented when we offer guys and we get in on some guys a little bit earlier than other schools. It's kind of a target for schools to come after some of those guys, right? They kind of let us do the evaluation and they start recruiting the guys. So I think that's something we're celebrating for sure. I'm proud of these guys in this class. It's something you just don't see a whole lot of. This is probably realistically the most uneventful signing day I've had in my 15 years in college football. I slept extremely well last night. I have the last few weeks. There's nobody I've been worried about or concerned about. No hat games, any of that. Like Coach said, there's nothing wrong with that. We just prefer not to deal with that if we don't have to. And really, at the end of the day, our goal is still always going to be the same. We're going to try and build a roster through the high school ranks. We're going to try and develop kids. If we have some pressing or glaring needs, we're certainly going to look in the portal for those and try and address those. But at the end of the day, it's call us old school, call us different, whatever you want to call us. It's something we believe in. It's worked pretty well here. We're going to continue to do it that way and just keep working through those high school ranks. So with that, I'll open up to any questions anybody may have about specific guys or anything from there.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. We'll start with Elliot Clow, rivals.com.
Hey, Tyler, appreciate the time today.
Yeah.
And first thing I think everybody wants to know about is the quarterback in the 2024 class, James Reeser. I know he was another early commit, not quite the core four, but a guy that committed pretty early. What did you like about him? What stood out about his game?
Yeah, the fabulous fifth, if we're going to keep naming guys here in this class. James, it's interesting. James obviously lives in Jacksonville, but his parents are both from Wisconsin. He's still got a bunch of family in Wisconsin. So while they are Floridians, they're Midwesterners at heart. And James was a guy that, he had been to some other schools in the Big Ten and kind of reached out to us really prior to us recruiting him. And it was that Midwest connection. And once him and his dad came on campus for the first time, just getting around James and finding out a little bit more about him, obviously a phenomenal track athlete, 10.67 last year in the 100. Did that hurt as well? We fully expect him, and I think he'd echo it. We expect him to go sub 10.5 this spring. And when you do that at 6'3.5", 205 pounds, that's pretty impressive. James is still raw as a passer, but you can't deny the athletic ability that he has, and that's something that intrigued us. Something maybe a little bit different than we have in the room currently, that we've had in the room in the past few years. And James is another kid. Once he came up here, I think it was the third time he was up here is when he committed to us. They were fully locked in, and he had plenty of other suitors, and he had picked up some offers, but never wavered from day one committing to us. They've been up here, I think, all total now 5 times in the recruiting process, which that's not an easy trip from Jacksonville. But a kid that you really like, very focused, really mature kid. But just the athletic traits you see alone and some of the stuff he does, especially running, is what makes you excited about him.
Next question, Tyler, comes from Tom Kakert, Hawkeye Report.
Hey, Tom.
Tyler, wanted to ask you about the defensive line. 4 guys, and in particular, Anderson and Kennedy, who are, sons of NFL players, and just doing the projections with both those guys because they're not fully formed yet. Just what you guys saw recruiting those guys.
Yeah, I mean, really, all 4 guys are completely different stories. And I'll start off with just Drew Campbell. Obviously, we knew a lot about Drew. I remember when Drew was in 7th grade, I think, when Jack did his first camp here. There's a lot of mannerisms that are exactly the same about Drew and Jack, but at the same time, they're completely different people. Personality-wise, they couldn't be more polar opposite. Jack's quiet and stoic. Drew's got a little personality to him, and excuse my French, I think a little bit more shit to him on the outside. And Drew's got his camped here a bunch. We've seen him grow up. His dad obviously was a college football player. We know about Jack. For us, it was a no-brainer. We wanted to take Drew as a football player. The kid's tough. He's relentless. He's a hard charger. That was a pretty easy one for us. Although he tried to make it kind of tough for us in the recruiting process. Probably didn't commit as early as we thought he would, or would have liked him to. But eventually he did it on his own terms, and we're excited about that. Before I get to Joseph and Devin, Chima, he's from Dallas. That was a LeVar Woods find. Really raw, humongous human being. I mean, he's going to be massive once he gets here and gets in our weight room and really works with Coach Braithwaite and his staff. Had a really big year for us this year. But that was one that LeVar kind of dug up and got KB down there in the spring to see him, and both those guys really liked him. Great kid, really good family, extremely smart kid. Very respectful. You like when you're around him, but when you turn on the football film and when you see the kid, when he shook my hands, I'm pretty sure he was touching my elbow. He's just a massive human being, and I think he's just going to grow and get bigger. Devin, Devin was a guy. LeVar's been a little bit more out in Phoenix the last couple of years recruiting, and Jimmy Kennedy, his dad, who played for Penn State, first-round draft pick, had a really good career in the NFL and a great career in college. LeVar, had kind of he'd known Jimmy for a while, so that was one that popped up. And Devin's he's a basketball player. This is a second-year football player, still really raw. But what he did on his first year on the football field, and we worry sometimes when it's just you're just a basketball player and you're playing football. Are you going to look like a football player, or are you going to play like a basketball player? Not saying basketball players are soft by any means, but they're very different sports. And Devin didn't look anything like that. And when KB had a chance to go down there and see him, and he came up here in camp this June too. He came up here and earned his offer, and we were down to him and another guy that we felt good about, and we were going to offer one of them. And Devin was the guy, and he hopped on it pretty quick. And his dad's great. I mean, he's been through this process. He's played at a high level. He knows how to help prepare Devin, and it's been really cool to see. And Devin, talk about another really, really impressive kid. I feel like I'm talking to a 40-year-old when I'm talking to Devin. He does not seem like he's 18 at all, but he's a guy that's going to fit in really well into that D-line room. And then Joseph, he's a really soft-spoken kid. Dad obviously played in the NFL. 2 brothers that played Division I football. We talk about a freak athlete. What caught my attention is just his track stuff. His long jump and his triple jump numbers were unbelievable for a kid that's 6'5" and 210 pounds. They really don't make sense. And then as I started to dig further and watching the film, I'm texting Abdul Hodge, who recruited Joseph and KB, and I was like, hey guys, you need to check this kid out. Like, this kid's a little bit different. And still underdeveloped, and he's going to compete in track this winter and spring, and probably do really well. But once he gets here and just has a chance to put on the weight, his dad's a big human being, a very scary looking guy. Wouldn't want to mess with Benny, but he's also soft spoken a little bit like Joseph. So it's kind of funny seeing that. Both his brothers are big stout guys. So we have no doubt that once Joseph gets here and gets in the weight room, he's going to put on weight, but I'm pretty sure he's going to keep that athletic ability he has. I mean, some of the stuff he can do with that size, it's really intriguing and it's fun to see.
Tyler Tashman, Des Moines Register.
Hey Tyler, I hope you're doing well.
Good name.
Was just wondering, yeah, Same to you. I appreciate it. Was just curious with obviously an offensive coordinator change coming, what the line of communication has been like with the guys on the offensive side of the ball, and then also just the fact that you were kind of speaking to their character that they all remain committed even though there is some uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, part of my job and my role is anytime there's a change or anything that pops up, I've got to play damage control a little bit. And as soon as that news came out, I got with Coach Ferris, told me, we need to touch base, specifically him with every offensive commit. We just need to explain to him the situation. The biggest thing is, we were honest with him. We don't know who it's going to be. Brian's going to finish a year, and we're going to focus on the season. That's our main goal as the players in the building and trying to win more football games. But at the end of the day, you got to trust and have faith in Coach Ferentz and this program and this culture that we're going to replace it with somebody that's going to fit who we are and fits the values of Coach Ferentz and what he's looking for. And honestly, I don't think any of the conversations were really tough conversations. We were just being open and honest before anything really became public with the commits. Wanted to let them know. Obviously, started with James being at that quarterback position, but just telling them they stick with us. We're going to have a plan in place, but told them fully that nothing's going to happen until postseason. And really the whole way through, I think a lot of these guys, they understood, they're committing to University of Iowa, they're committing to Coach Ferentz too. That's a big part of who they're committing to. And, just the tradition that we have here and the players in the building. A lot of these guys have been up here multiple times and have been around the players. So, we lean on those guys as well. But, you try and get in front of it, you try and be honest and, don't sugarcoat anything and certainly don't lie to them about anything. And you hope that they stick with you. And thankfully all those guys did.
John Steppe, the Gazette.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for doing this. Wanted to ask you about the scholarship kind of squeeze that you have right now with that 85 number. Some places go really far above that. Are you comfortable going above 85? How far comfortable are you going above? What's kind of your philosophy on that?
John, wouldn't you love to know the real numbers?
Of course.
It's, again, you can go back, we keep all these numbers and I have a whole spreadsheet based on the attrition we've had from fall all the way through the next fall. And history would tell you, we typically lose, 4 to 5 guys in the spring. So we're probably going to operate with those numbers. Again, just the COVID guys, that's been a little bit of a struggle in terms of maintaining the numbers that we want to maintain. I think it's much, much easier when we don't have to worry about that. But we'll take a look at everything. We'll take a look at everything post bowl game, and there's always 2 waves in the portal this time of year. There's the early wave, and then there's a wave after the bowl game. We don't want to lose anybody off our roster currently, but I'd be shocked if there's not 1 or 2 that may pop in the portal post bowl game. It's just the world we live in. That's kind of how things work. It is what it is. But I'm in constant communication with Coach Ferentz and our coordinators, especially this time of year, almost every single day. Especially we're waiting for decisions from those 6 guys in our roster currently. So I may panic a little bit more than Coach Ferentz, but when he says it's going to work out, I've got to trust him. He's got way more experience in this sport than I do. But it is something you're looking at, and there's no hard answer. There's no hard number. It's hard to say. We're going to continue to monitor things, and it'll be fluid, and we'll kind of see where the chips fall.
Adam Jacoby, Rivals.com.
Tyler, thank you so much for your time today. Really quick, just wanted to ask you about that backfield duo of Xavier Williams and Brevin Dahl. Just sort of what stuck out about both of them, and how did that process sort of shake out with them?
Yeah, with Brevin, we've known a lot about Brevin for a long time. He's been on campus quite a bit. His mom went to school here, Hawkeye family. Obviously, the track numbers, he didn't get to compete in track last year because of an injury, but the year before, you definitely take notice of those track numbers. And when he was up here the very first time, when we looked at Brevin, we were worried about his size. Is he going to be big enough? And his dad's a big guy. Dad's a really tall guy. And the more he got up here, the more we started seeing him fill out a little bit, and we felt a little bit better about where his body was going. And it got to the point, and we've kind of done this a little bit more in the last few years, is in-state, Iowa's our priority, right? And if there are guys in-state that have those traits we're looking for, and we're familiar with the guys and we're comfortable with them, and the more they're up here, the better we like them and their families, we're not going to wait time. We're not going to waste any time anymore. Like, we're going to go on those guys, and Brevin's a good example of that. It just so happened to work out that, Brevin was our second running back commit. Xavier ended up committing the day before him, and we had 3 offers out. I think that was pretty well documented at the running back spot. With Xavier, he came on campus early in the spring, and none of us had seen him except for Coach Bell. He'd seen him one time in his school, but when he came on campus, think LaShawn Daniels. I mean, he's built like LaShawn. His lowers, he looks like an NFL running back in his lowers. He's a very thick kid. And he's built well up top too, but he can tell he's going to fill out up top, and he's got some room to grow. But our running game, the way we run the football, inside outside zone, I mean, he fits who we are. You know, he may not be a sub 1,100-meter guy like Brevin is, but when you're running in third and fourth quarter with a guy that's 235 pounds, that wears on linebackers and safeties, and that's what we're hoping Xavier can be. Extremely impressive family, really extremely impressive kid. And he had called to commit, and then so we let the two other guys know that night that, hey, we're taking 2 running backs. We had one just commit to us. There's one spot left, and Brevin hopped on it pretty quickly.
Okay, we have 5 more hands raised. We'll take those 5 and then finish up. We'll start with Chad Leistico, Des Moines Register.
Hey, Tyler, you can just send those numbers to us, the scholarship numbers, if you want.
I'll send you my phone. We'll see how high it gets. Maybe I'll leak some stuff for you.
So I know you can't talk about 25 specifically, but you did get a commit in that class at quarterback real recently, at least publicly. And he can move. James Rezar seems like he can move pretty well. Marco Linus, same thing. Is there anything to that? Is that just happenstance? Or are you guys going in more in that direction, like a dual threat type thing? Can you kind of explain your philosophy of quarterback right now?
It's not something we sit down and say we're going to go out and find a dual threat quarterback. And honestly, there is a difference between dual threat and a guy that's athletic enough and has good enough feet to extend the plays and provide some stuff in the run game if you need to. So it's not something we sit down and say we have to go find a dual threat quarterback. There were a few guys on our board that we were getting ready to offer in the 25 class that were different than that athlete you're talking about. So for us, I mean, the first thing with quarterback, first and foremost, as much as you can get around them and get them in the room and see how they learn and see how they retain things. I mean, the quarterback, it's the hardest position to play on the field. Sorry if I offend anybody on here that played a different position, but it's true. There's a lot of things going on there. You're going through a lot of things every single play, pre-snap, post-snap. So the biggest thing is just the mental side of things. That's absolutely 100% the biggest thing. And then anything from there, there's certain traits and characteristics we look for. Ideally, you'd like a kid who can extend the play a little bit if the pocket breaks down and can maybe provide some stuff on his feet, but that's not at all the first thing we're looking for. So it's kind of happened to work out like that. I think you're starting to see more and more kids these days are just better athletes, honestly, even at the quarterback position. So we're not gonna recruit only dual threat guys from here on out. But if we can find a guy that is smart, can sling it, can move around a little bit, obviously that's a net positive for everybody.
Elliot Clow, Rivals.com.
Hey, Tyler. Jalen Watson, a guy that had some offers at wide receiver. I think all of his offers were a wide receiver other than at Iowa. Did you like the fact that he also played wide receiver? Like, how did that work out? Just seeing the wide receiver tape, flipping him to DB. Obviously, there's the Fred Russell connection too. Just how did that work out with Jalen?
Yeah, I think Phil would tell you if all of his DBs played receiver, that'd be good because for our guys this year is a little bit different, obviously. But when they get their hands on the ball, we want them to catch it. So hands are extremely important in our secondary and what we prefer with those guys. We had a connection with Jalen prior to him moving to Toledo. He's at Belleville, which we've had some guys from Belleville. The coaches were talking about him, and I think they actually saw him as a better corner than a receiver. And then he ended up transferring down to Central Catholic in Toledo and had a huge year. I think he was kind of unguardable. Actually, I think he was a problem for every team they faced. But he camped here in June, and he was super smooth. And we told him, we're going to recruit you as, we had another receiver, similar body type, similar skill set that we felt that was going to commit to us pretty shortly thereafter, and he ended up doing that. So we kind of told Jalen, we see you as a DB. We think you have a corner skill set. We want to see what you can do in a camp setting. And he was awesome. For a kid that didn't play a whole lot of DB, just what he was able to do in that skill set. Extremely smooth, extremely fluid, awesome attitude, great demeanor. The ball skills, obviously, that's a plus and something we look for. And we told him, at no point, once you committed, we're not going to flip you over. Now things can change when guys get on campus. Who knows what will happen? But I think Phil's pretty excited about him. I know I'm excited about him. He's a good player, and just how he plays. When you watch him, he's a dynamic kid with the ball in his hands that works in the return game. Awesome. But just his fluidity, his length, that's something that, corners don't grow on trees that move like that. So we can find guys like that. We're going to take them all day long.
Scott Docterman, The Athletic.
Tyler, I wanted to ask you about Reese Vandersee. I know he played a lot of positions out in Western Iowa, Northwest Iowa. What did you think of? What do you think of him as a wide receiver, and is he going to be that ideal X that you're looking for?
Yeah, to start with Reese, one is, long line of Hawkeye fans and graduates in his family, 4-sport athlete. You know us, we love 3 and 4 sport athletes. Most of our Iowa guys are all in that 3 or 4 sport athlete category. He's great on the basketball court. He's a really good pitcher in baseball. He's a phenomenal track athlete. This year he played a lot of quarterback for his team out of necessity. But he's a big kid who's, again, he needs the weight room, but when he gets here, I think he's really going to fill out, and he's going to be a physical presence on the outside. You can't teach length, can't teach, the explosiveness he has. You see that in the basketball film. He runs well, obviously a good track athlete. If we could have 4 or 5 of those in state every year, that would be awesome. Reese is probably a little bit of an anomaly in state, just given his size, stature, and his overall athletic profile. But we're excited about Reese. He's a really good kid. We had to fend off the other school in state. I know they were extremely high on him. It probably helped that he comes from a Hawkeye family, but comes from a really good family. He's the oldest of 6 in his family. Their family is awesome when they're around here with all their little siblings. But that ideally, yeah, if we could find an X guy that's 6'5", 200 pounds, and is probably going to get bigger and is a phenomenal 4-sport athlete, sign us up every single day for that.
Howard Tashman, Des Moines Register.
As far as the transfer portal this offseason, I know there's some things that still have to get figured out with guys staying and going for the NFL, but are there any priorities that you feel like are needs that you could potentially look in the transfer portal to get?
The priorities are the 6 guys we're recruiting on our own roster right now. And I'll be fully transparent. This was last December. It was a little bit wild with the portal and the needs we had and the guys we were trying to go after, because it's pretty rapid. I have done nothing this December but recruit the 6 guys on our roster to come back. They're probably tired of hearing from me. That's probably why they blocked my phone number at this point. Those are the priorities, and it's hard to have a true priorities until we know what some of these guys are going to do. Because if a couple of them decide to move on and go to the NFL, then we may have to fill a hole or 2 at their spots. But in terms of outside of our current roster and the guys coming back, there's nothing specific we've talked about just yet. We'll see how this shakes out numbers wise. And I know that's a long-winded, bad answer for you. It's so fluid with the guys we're waiting to hear from to come back that it's, we'll see kind of what happens. It's a lot of it's dependent upon them. We could have sat down and told them we need a decision by X date so we can go to the portal, but these are kids. We want all these kids back. They're 4th, 5th, 6th year guys on our team. We know who they are. It's well worth investing the time to recruit these guys back before we even think about going out to the portal.
Last question, Chelsea Brown, KCRG.
I think I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Beautiful. With your linebackers, specifically just Preston and Derek, they're 2 guys that play at small schools. They play both sides of the ball. Had some success on the offensive side of the ball, but it's never uncommon for Iowa to take some guys on the offensive side of the ball, put them over on the defensive side. What is it that you look for in guys, specifically turning them into linebackers, that makes you think that Preston and Derek are going to be pretty good fits?
It's funny, and I wouldn't leave out Cam Buffington because he does the same thing in 8-man, plays both ways. I actually had to talk to the Monday morning quarterback club, I think after our bye week, and I was getting hammered by a few older gentlemen there that, Preston Reese, he's now the all-time yardage leader in Iowa football history offensively, and why he couldn't play quarterback or receiver or running back. And I had to tell him just trust our evaluations. This is kind of how we evaluate linebackers. But that goes back to Seth, and I'm a strong believer in Seth that we want all of our linebackers better play multiple sports, ideally 3. We want to see you do different things. We love seeing linebackers that are running backs in high school. There's something to be said for just your vision and the ability and the agility that those guys have. Cam was a quarterback, but he was a running back essentially. Derek had to play some quarterback this year, phenomenal receiver. Preston does anything the team needs to happen for them at Monticello. All 3 guys, just their overall profiles. They hit us perfectly. We knew about Cam a little bit before we did about Derek and Preston. Cam was a phenomenal basketball player. I think he was dunking in 7th grade. And for an 8-man football, you just don't see the freakiness that he has. In this camp this past summer, Cam was 6'3", 225 pounds, and ran 4.48 and 4.49. That's to us, that is freakish. If he went and did that at a rivals camp or Under Armour camp, he'd be a 4.5 star. The guys would be frothing at the mouth over him. But instead, he lives in Winfield, Iowa, and he doesn't go to those camps. I think he goes to AAU basketball tournaments and he comes to Iowa, and that's probably the extent of what he does when he's not hunting. So I think that's a gym that a lot of people aren't talking about. That I think you'll probably hear his name a lot in the future here. And Derek, Derek's a long rangy kid who's again got freakish numbers, high jump, shot put. I mean, those are two things for a 210-pound kid that you don't. That's not a combination you see very often or almost ever, which is intriguing to us. And then Preston, Preston's probably him and Cam are both pretty quiet. I think Cam's probably quieter to 3. But Preston, he just does everything. Another again the other 4-sport athlete in our class. He's good at everything he does. All 3 kids are tough as shit. I mean, they've all camped here, I think, 10 to 12 times combined since they've been committed to us, which you've got to be crazy to come up here and camp. Like, you're already committed. We're not going to drop you. Like, what are you coming up here for? They yelled at by Coach Wallace for 3.5 hours, and they love it, and they thrive on it. So, all 3 of those guys, they get along well. Preston just spent the whole weekend in Winfield this past weekend with Cam hunting. We were giving a little bit of crap because apparently he got a smaller deer than Cam did, like almost a baby deer. But so we'll work on his hunting skills. But just the whole character makeup of all 3 of those guys, awesome families, great people, blue collar people that when they need to roll up their sleeves and go to work, that's what they're going to do. And I think that embodies our linebacker room. And you can look through history, and I think that's pretty much the same.
Okay, Tyler, thanks for the time and congratulations on the class.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tyler.